Welcome back to the channel. If you've seen any of my videos before, you know I'm a big Fuji user. I had the X-T30, which I sold for my X-H1. After that, I got the X-T20, a much older camera, as my B camera. And now we're on the X-T4. Main reason I got this camera is so that it can now be my A camera in moving my X-H1, which is a little older right now and has some limitations in terms of the way I shoot, moving that to my B camera. We're here at this really cool park nearby. Pretty overcast day, as you can see, but we're gonna be testing the performance of the X-T4, pretty bare bones. And what I mean by that is we're not gonna be using any gimbals or tripods today or sliders. For the most part, it's just gonna be all handheld. We're gonna do a combination of tests, mostly focusing on the IBIS performance. I recently updated to the latest firmware for the body, which is 1.03, which all it says, it's pretty vague. It says it's done a number of minor fixes. We don't really know what they are. We're gonna see how well we can do vlogging tests as well as walking tests using the new firmware update here. We're filming with the VIltrox 23mm f1.4 lens. That also recently got a firmware update. The X-T4 plus the VIltrox 23mm is now my favorite lightweight filming setup just because of how compact and light it is and the fact that that lens is pretty good for a wide variety of shooting styles that I like to do, whether it's portraiture, landscapes, as well as some close-ups and macro photography as well. If you're in get it out. Ready? If you're interested in learning more about the X-T4, the VIltrox 23mm, or any of the other gear that I use, recommend as well, you can use the links down below. They're affiliate links. Doing so helps support the channel, and I really appreciate you doing so. We're gonna start off by doing a couple walking tests here. Mia's behind the camera. She's gonna be filming me, following me, as I walk backwards here and continue to talk a little bit more about the camera. Right now, it is in IBIS plus OIS plus digital image stabilization. For walking, where it's not as predictable in terms of movement, I would suggest taking off the digital image stabilization. In fact, Fujifilm recommends just using the digital stabilization in conjunction with the IBIS when it comes to panning shots like this, up, down, left, right. Things that are a little bit more controlled and in one direction. The other misconception about the IBIS system on the Fujifilm cameras is the boost mode. A lot of people don't really understand what it does and when you should be using it. Again, if you look in the menu system of the Fujifilm camera, boost is primarily recommended for static shots, when you just want it to look like you're basically on a tripod. It works really well because it's cropping in a lot of your image, so when you've got your camera relatively still, but it's just got that minor shake and jitter of your hands just trying to hold it still, boost really does well at eliminating that because it's cropping in enough that it's hiding those minor movements. However, when people are trying to test out the boost, a lot of them are either doing, like we said, walking tests or panning tests, which isn't recommended for boost. Now you can see as she's running what kind of performance you can get out of that. Again, that's with digital image stabilization. And this is what it's like with digital stabilization off. The best way I would describe it is, because it's doing it digitally, you can get a lot of weird wonky parts, especially in the corners of your image, similar to when you're using warp stabilization like in Premiere Pro or whatever editing suite that you use. It works well for a lot of things, but when the movement is too crazy, digital can actually make it look far worse. The next set of steps that we're gonna be, The next set of tests that we're gonna be doing is the step test, walking up and down the staircase here. Just going down real quick. Likewise, as we're going through these tests, we do have autofocus on, so you can kind of see the autofocus performance as I go down the steps, turn my head a little bit. I'm holding onto the railing so I don't kill myself. But Mia, can you tell me, does it have a green box or any kind of indicator on my face telling me that it's following my face? Sony's autofocus system is still far superior than that of Fujifilm. Fujifilm is catching up, but it's still not on that same level, especially when it comes to object tracking, whether that's a face, an animal, or just any other regular object as well. Now she's just gonna do the set of stairs coming up with digital stabilization off, and you can see what the difference would look like. Digital, again, it's kind of hit or miss when it comes to these kind of movements. Hey. When I redid these steps, walking a little bit more carefully here, you should notice that IBIS plus OIS seems to look the most natural. In comparison, however, once you add digital stabilization, it might seem a little bit smoother at times. However, those corners are definitely pretty apparent that there's some digital stabilization in play. IBIS plus OIS plus digital plus boost is not recommended, especially in steps. You'll notice a lot more jerkiness in terms of the movement. It seems to be, I would guess that's probably because it's trying to keep
it more locked off as opposed to smoothing it out, and that's why you get more of that jerky movement there. It's not as bad as having no stabilization at all, but it's pretty close. And while not as bad as not having any stabilization at all, it still is pretty bad. When you look at them all side by side, you get a really good idea for the difference in smoothness between all of them. Again, with IBIS plus OIS being pretty smooth.
IBIS plus OIS without digital seems to be the best. Digital seems to do some wonky things when you're walking, and it's best for just tracking and panning shots. IBIS OIS no boost. Looks pretty good to me from here. OIS IBIS plus boost. Everything is off now. Not the worst thing in the world, not great.
Now, before I take the camera over and do the vlogging test on my own here, as well as turn off this microphone so you can see what the audio quality is like just recording straight out of the camera itself, I'll tell you a couple of the other key reasons why I got the Fuji X-T4, why I like it so much, and how I think it's gonna be a great supplement and upgrade to the X-H1. Mia's getting some really artsy shots right now, which I really appreciate. It's something that I definitely couldn't do on my own, but I sometimes don't have the luxury of filming with her. The X-H1 wasn't a great camera to film yourself with, especially when it comes to outdoor filming. The fact that it doesn't have a fully articulating screen, it became very difficult to just film yourself with, especially lining up shots. For example, making sure your head's in focus and frame, as well as with vlogging. The addition of the flip out screen is great because now I can actually see what I'm filming, especially when, again, I'm in front of the camera and I want to be filming myself. And while the autofocus has been improved over the X-H1, it's still not great, still not reliable like we were talking about a little bit earlier.
It just unfocused.
It unfocused?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, perfect example right there. Especially when you've got scenes where I'm kind of blending more into the background. And the thing I've noticed previously, especially when I had the X-T30 previously, was when it comes to me being outdoors in high contrast scenes, it just seemed like it would lose my face really easily. Even when it looked like it was locked on, it would still pulse. So I'm sure Fujifilm unfortunately hasn't been able to fix that yet, perhaps in a firmware update. But I think the thing I'm looking most forward to using the X-T4 is the fact that it's like my X-H1, but better in almost every single way, in a kind of more compact, smaller, as well as a bit more modern body. I can use my existing lenses, and the fact that my X-H1 wasn't bad really, it just had a couple issues and things that made it a little more difficult, especially with regards to filming myself. The X-T4 solves most of those, again, because of that flip out screen, as well as the addition of better IBIS. So we're gonna do a couple more tests in the park here just to give you a better understanding of these new upgrades.
So all these shots are gonna be done just using the Fuji X-T4 and the VIltrox 23mm, like we said earlier, as well as the internal mic. We're not gonna be doing any additional adjustments. Right now, I am shooting an F-log, and the entire video is going to be an F-log. I'm not even using a selfie stick, I'm just kind of holding the camera with one hand, mostly on the lens and a bit of it on the body too. We have face and eye tracking on. I do know that it's not really the most reliable thing, even just from my first couple tests using it. And while this might not be the best lens for vlogging for most people, a lot of people prefer wider angle lenses. I kind of like it more tight on my face and upper neck area. And I think the bokeh that you can get with it looks extremely good. Right now we're just at f2.5. We've actually increased the shutter speed to 1000 right now because the lowest ISO setting that you can have in F-Log is 640. But obviously one of the big things and benefits of having this camera coming from the X-H1, which I still have, and that's now becoming my B camera. I previously had the X-H1 as my A camera and the X-T20 as my B camera. The main issue with that, however, is because it doesn't have a Eterna or the ability to shoot in F-Log, I noticed it was far more difficult to get, again, more of that color match when I'm trying to do more intense color grade. The X-T20 kind of fell behind in that sense. Going with the Fuji X-T4 now, which has the flip out screen, it's not better than the X-H1 in every single way, but it does improve upon it in a lot of ways. One, of course, is the convenience factor of being a one-man filming crew, especially when it comes to filming yourself. A flip out screen is a game changer. One thing I will say about it that is a little bit weird is when you are looking at it, because it's on the right hand side, when you flip it towards yourself in selfie position, your eye isn't as focused on the lenses itself. You can kind of get a little distracted and look to the side there. So something you just kind of need to train yourself to do. I do see the benefit of Sony's system, for example, where you have the flip up screen. You'd be looking a little bit higher eye level as opposed to the right, as if you're looking off into the distance like there's something more important over there. And I know audio on this is not going to be the best right now, but again, we want to just see, just out of the box, how does it perform? This is me just talking at a normal voice to you, just so you can kind of see what's the microphone of the camera pick up. And now we'll flip this around to the non-selfie position here, and you can see and hear, mostly hear, what the microphone sounds like when you're standing behind it. Again, not using any additional microphone attached to the camera. The IBIS is slightly better, but not a huge amount from what I've noticed. It does have more IBIS specific modes, like the addition of digital image stabilization and the boost mode, which are new. But really, the big things with this are its slow motion capability. So instead of just being able to shoot in 120 FPS, it can now shoot in 240 FPS. The X-H1's autofocus wasn't the worst in the world, but it wasn't very reliable, and I often found myself mostly using manual controls due to the pulsing of in and out. Even when it looked like it was tracked or locked onto your subject, especially faces, it would still pulse in and out, especially in outdoor scenes like this.
So thanks again for checking out today's video. I hope you liked these tests and it gave you a better understanding as far as the benefits of the X-T4's new upgrades, some of the reasons I like it so far, some of the reasons I bought it. Like we said a little bit earlier, this is just the first of the series on the Fuji X-T4. I have a lot more videos coming up on this camera. In future videos, we'll be taking a deeper dive on the features of this camera, talking about the pros, cons, some of the things I like, as well as some of the things I don't like compared to the X-H1, which I think is gonna be the biggest rival to this camera right now. So if you wanna learn more, stay tuned for those. And until the next one, guys, as always,